Hi, I'm Rebecca Hidalgo-Rains, and you're listening to Grateful Heart. I started this show to help educate my clients on the real estate market, and it's evolved into so much more. I've found that I love talking to people, and I love learning new things. While our expertise is still on the health of the housing market, we want to focus on the health and the well-being of our listeners as well. More specifically, where we reside in our hearts, in our minds, and in our homes. The biggest purchase in our life just isn't a house. It's where we raise our children, start a new business, pray for our loved ones, and follow our dreams. It's even where we listen to our favorite podcast. When we are successful at home, everything else just falls into place, and we are so grateful for that. Home is where the Grateful Heart is. Thank you for joining us today. Hi guys, I'm your host Rebecca Hidalgo-Rains with Grateful Heart TV, and in studio today is none other than Gary Hix of Into Wells. Welcome back. I say welcome back because Gary's been on my show a handful of times now.
Yes, I'm glad to be back again.
I'm super glad. So last time I called you, Gary, I was in a panic. I was in such a panic, you guys. And the reason why I was in a panic, I wanted to get this show out as soon as I could. And I titled it, Is Arizona Running Out of Water? The reason, as you know, Gary, is because the news media loves headlines that are sadly a little...
That have impact.
That have impact. That's probably the best way to say it.
Thank you.
Headlines that have impact. Now, if they're accurate impact, that's a different conversation, whether or not the accuracy, but it does definitely get people talking. And you know what happened? 8 months ago, Gary and Catherine from ASU, she's an amazing water authority as well. Incredibly knowledgeable, but she has a little bit different take than you do because of all your years of groundwater. Groundwater is your specialty.
Thank you. Yes, it is.
And it happens to be, dun, 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 Groundwater Awareness Week this week, folks.
Yes, this year, between the 10th of February and the 16th, this is the 26th National Groundwater Awareness Week, and the National Groundwater Association is the agency primarily that sponsors it. They have a sister association called the Groundwater Foundation. We really like that word, groundwater, because it's important, and it's important to everyone all across the country. This is a national event. Other people in other states will be doing something similar to what we're doing, is trying to get the word out about how important groundwater is everywhere.
Well, and it's not just the fact that it's important to drink. We can't eat. We can't do anything without water. So we're made, 90% of us is water. So
that's right.
I would say it's probably 90% important for most people.
It's essential to everyone. Especially a little more so here in the Southwest and in the desert areas and states, yes.
Well, the reason why I had you on last time, different from today, because today we're talking about, woohoo, water. Everybody needs to be aware, and it's a happy week. We're celebrating water this week. We're celebrating the fact that we actually have water in Arizona, unbeknownst to the rest of the country. I was just sharing with Gary that I've been traveling a lot for work recently, and almost one of the very first things people say to me when I'm like, oh yeah, I'm from Arizona, they're like, oh, you guys have water issues. Like literally, Gary, the first thing, especially because I'm in real estate. So they go, oh, that's a problem. Are people even buying houses out in Arizona anymore?
Well, if they're saying that, it's a misperception. They're not informed. And that's really what this week is all about, is trying to inform people all across the country about groundwater and what's there, how much, how to regulate it. Every state, or just about every state, has a different groundwater law that controls how they use it. They have different privileges, and they have different needs for what they're doing. Here, with agriculture, we have a big need for groundwater.
And we did talk about it on the last episode, which was fun for me. I didn't get to have you and Catherine in studio together. We have done that before, and it is a lot of fun when we get both of you guys in studio together. But you guys were actually on a little bit of different opinions as far as when it came to agriculture. And it was interesting for me to hear that from two very renowned individuals in our state as when it comes to water, when it comes to opinions on water. And right now it shows 13.2 million households have their own well, representing 34 million people. That's a big deal.
It's a big number, whether that's absolute, number or a positive number. It's so hard to tell in many ways because a lot of states don't keep track of the details of the pumping. They're not mandated to meter and monitor the production. So those are good numbers, and it's good to put it in perspective, and we have to have that. But when we want to know exactly how many people are dependent upon groundwater in Arizona, it's probably a very high percentage. But unfortunately, our well records are not kept in a way that we can just go in there and read a real number.
You know, I was sitting here thinking the first time we met, you know what it was about. So just because if you guys haven't seen our past episodes, 136 is the most recent episode that we did if you want to check it out and learn about all the misnomers when it comes to water in Arizona. We actually have water here. But I reached out to Gary because I had a problem. I bought land in northern Arizona, and 1 week after I closed escrow, the community that I was in had a moratorium on meters. By the way, I got meters now. It's only taken me 3 years to get them, but I got my meters. So I reached out, and a friend of a friend of a friend got me and Gary in touch. And Gary, nobody, I can't imagine anybody else in this world. He went up into Pine, Arizona, where my land is, and he marked out by hand and drew out all of the maps or all of the wells in the area.
Yes.
And a lot of them had been abandoned, and that was 44 years ago that you did that?
Well, it was a senior thesis in college, so it was a few years ago.
It was it was a couple decades. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
And what was amazing to me was the detail that you did, because that was before computers or anything like that. So when you're talking about this number here, I can understand where the number might be off, because how many people like you go around actually marking to the level that you did?
Right. Well, it changes every year exactly how many people are on there. But you can say 34 million plus or minus 2 million. What difference does it make? It's still a very large number.
Yeah.
But you brought up a very good point in that there are places in the state and in the world where groundwater does not exist beneath the land. And when we can talk about this later, but what that means is that someone that does have water beneath their land is going to have to either share it with you, or they're going to have to sell it to you. And getting the water to where it's needed is sometimes the challenge. Not that whether there's enough right there, it's just not available in the spot where it's needed.
Now, let's talk about this real quick, going back to where it's needed and how we get water where it's going. I know where we're going in this episode, and I got to tell you guys, we don't have enough kids coming out of school wanting to be Gary and wanting to be a water scientist. Hydrogeologist. Hydrogeologist is the actual title this gentleman has earned in his outstanding career. And we need more people like Gary, because one of these days, what are we going to do?
That's right, and that's what the National Groundwater Association represents. We are the association for groundwater scientists and engineers, the water well drillers and pump installers, the people who manufacture all that equipment that goes into the water wells and so on, and the drill rig manufacturers. Those are the big boys.
Yes, they are. They're the ones that what they charge you per foot, $10,000, something along those lines.
Well, you mean not for the drilling, but let's say you were buying a drill rig off the showroom floor today. You're not looking at $100,000, you're looking at $1 million just to get a new drill rig out to the field.
So that explains why it costs so much to drill for a well.
That's part of it. Now, we do have a lot of opportunities, though, for what we call blue-collar workers. I kind of like to think of myself as the
Hey, you got your blue collar on right now, Gary.
Yes, I do. Well, blue's my color. But I like to think of myself as the micro person of groundwater, because there was a case here I could show you what I did during this week. Let me scoot ahead quite a ways.
That's fine.
Over the years, I have participated in Groundwater Week in different manners.
Yeah.
In this particular year, 2020, I was speaking to a group of high school students in something called the Academy of Building Industry, AOBI. And these were kids who were in high school. So
it's a trade school.
Trade school, trade high school, yes, so that they could do that. And I explained to them that there are opportunities in that business, our business of groundwater, where blue collar workers can make 6-digit
Probably their first year.
Well, maybe a second year.
Second year. But that's because of the demand.
Yes, it can go on.
Because of the demand. I mean,
because of demand.
That's the issue. Like, I have a nephew who just became a pilot. The industry for pilots is the same thing.
Yes.
There's not enough young folks wanting to get into there, and it's very lucrative.
Oh, yeah.
And you need training. It's not like you're just not specialized.
Right.
You have to get trained in it.
Oh, I know. I'm a former commercial single-engine land and helicopter rated, so
so you know what I'm talking about there.
I built for that business, but didn't industry, and I didn't
go
stay
there.
In it. Yeah, I didn't go there. But we're getting off subject there.
Going back to the education piece, though, I do want to definitely emphasize anybody with a kid thinking about going to college. Think about this. Trade schools, I mean, every industry, we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need people to build houses, and obviously we need water folks too.
Well, funny you should mention it, but if you are a pump installer, not the well driller, the well driller is one of those specialists, and he has that big rig and makes the hole in the ground, makes the well. But the pump person becomes a plumber, an electrician, a cement person, you make a lab, and sometimes contracting to build a building over the well. So it's a nice...
It could be a lucrative opportunity if somebody actually researched it. And I know that's probably not high on the job list that most people look at when they're going to go to college, but...
That's right.
It's one and why you guys have Water Awareness Week this week, so people hopefully will start thinking about that as an industry to go into.
Yes, we do.
If I had a daughter or son at that age getting ready to go into college, which I kind of do, but she hasn't figured out what she wants to do when she grows up, I may tell her she should look into some groundwater.
We have a lot of, look at the... Sarah.
Yeah.
Now, we have a lot of ladies that are groundwater professionals, scientists and engineers, chemists. There's all kinds of degrees that apply. Microbiology, that's another one that's very useful in groundwater.
That's amazing. And we also need it all cleaned up, too. I have a girlfriend of mine who actually became a scientist, and that's what she does, is she helps with that as well.
That's another portion of groundwater. We try, once it's dirty, it's hard to clean up. So we try hard not to pollute it, and that's part of Groundwater Awareness Week also. Which
is really important. So this week, I want to get back. Can we go back to the very beginning? Because Gary has got some amazing slides. One of them in particular, this one.
Is that the one?
I think it was this one and this one here, too.
They're both very good.
They're both amazing. Can you walk us through these slides, Gary?
Yes, it points out, starting with all the water on the earth, only 1% of it or so is what we call potable water or fresh water. Well, this slide shows 3%. But that, again, back to what I said earlier, the numbers might depend on who's the artist or the author. But 1 to 3% of fresh
Close
water.
enough.
The rest of the world is ocean. And then of that, a lot of our water is tied up in ice caps and glaciers and lakes and ponds and so on. 29 or 30% of it might be groundwater, but not all of that is available, and not all of it is available where it's needed. So when you get right down to it, it's a very small amount that we actually take out for human consumption and use. There's other uses that are much, much bigger than potable water.
Really? Mm-hmm. Now we're going to talk about those next, aren't we?
Okay.
Let's do it.
All
so
right.
the next use is the next slide that you have here. We kind of go from the oceans to the ice caps to the groundwater and the water in the soil. And then let's go ahead and go to the next slide, too.
See, here, water in living organisms, that's a fair portion of where water's taken up, too. That includes us. So this is Groundwater Awareness Week poster in the year 2020. It talked about maybe 27 trillion gallons of groundwater were used in the U.S. each year. Now, that's a lot of water, depending on whether it's 27 million or 28 million, and that was now 4 years ago.
Well, and they're talking in trillions. It's almost mind-boggling to get your mind wrapped around how much is that really?
Yes, it is.
And then you take that and go, wait a minute, but that's only 3% of all the water in this world. It's like, it's hard to even fathom.
It is, and we're fortunate. We're called the water planet, and we're called water organisms, human beings. But here's a slide that's pretty interesting for this week about the water supply in Arizona. We get about 36 to 40% of our total water from the Colorado River. We have some in-state rivers: San Pedro, Santa Cruz, Rito.
I have to ask you. The last time we talked, the Colorado River was really big in the news. I haven't heard a peep recently.
Isn't it funny how after the heavy winter snowfall and some rains in California, we don't hear so much about the level of
any of that.
Yes.
Well, so thank you, God, for all the rain, and let's keep it coming,
Yes.
right? Because
yes, rain and snow.
8 months ago, it was, oh my gosh, this was headline news.
Yes.
And now I'm not hearing a peep.
And now it's kind of off the boards, and some other things are coming up. Yeah. And there is one thing. This number here we call reclaimed water 5%. I think that's one of the solutions to our water needs in certain areas. I really believe that we can make better and more use of reclaimed water. I
bet we can.
And even down to maybe even drinking it again.
We talked about that in the last episode, Gary.
That's a tough one.
That was a hard one for me to swallow.
Yeah.
The last one, and same with this podcast, the thought of reclaimed water. But I understand because, like I said, I have a girlfriend from school who actually became a scientist, and her job is to clean the water and all of that. And that's actually, I think, why I asked you that question. And it even came up like, what? Ew.
Yeah, well, let's start by maybe we can pasteurize it and make beer or something else out of it
more
before
fun.
we drink it directly. Yes. Okay. All right.
So we have lots of rivers, but bottom line, groundwater is still number one source for Arizona.
Yeah, for our human consumption use, yes. And the thing is that the surface water takes a little more treatment than most of our groundwater. There's groundwater that needs to be cleaned up as much as the surface water. But we're not St. Louis. We're not Boston, Massachusetts, where they have rivers running by and you can just take it over and drink it. So, but all about Groundwater Awareness Week. This week in Arizona, we have something here. Yeah, there's the big one.
So this is the one that we're going to really talk about today. And this is where our past guest, Catherine, had been a little bit different opinion from your opinion with respect to the agriculture. And I remember asking her, kind of her thoughts on it. And she said to me, it was, well, gosh, whoever got here first. Let's talk about the Native Americans and their rights to water as well.
Well, that's true. They do have the senior water rights, and that has to do with the groundwater, with the laws, water laws for surface water. Now, surface water laws are different in Arizona from groundwater laws. Two different basic concepts. So is that something? This is Groundwater Awareness Week.
Yeah,
I'll make it education.
Yeah.
Okay, in Arizona, our surface water uses the concept of groundwater law of prior appropriation. So the first in time is the first in right. And some states, they'd use that same legal concept with groundwater, but it's a little harder to do that way because, well, even surface water, if it's running past your house or your property today, it's not the same water that's going to be there tomorrow, and that's the way we look at groundwater. So in Arizona, we use reasonable use law. There's 5 basic concepts of a law that applies to water. But we use reasonable use, and that means that if you're given the permission to intercept, capture, and hold on to the groundwater, it becomes yours. And you can put it to a reasonable use. And use is the big word in understanding. We think of ownership, but we do not own the water. We use it.
We use it because it's not something that stays, it gets used.
Yes, yeah. Well, in the states that's absolute dominion, they call it, where they say that you own the land, you own the water, and everything else to the center of the earth. That concept doesn't hold up very well with properties that are adjacent to another state, where the groundwater simply today
moves underneath
goes
both.
to the other state.
They don't know about state lines, does it?
They don't care about state. Groundwater doesn't care about it. Yes, that's true. So those are things. But anyway, my concept of this is, and I work with the irrigation industry and write some for their magazines. They're doing all they can to make their use of groundwater more efficient. They love to have surface water because it's cheaper and it's easier to capture and just open the canal gate and here it comes. Groundwater, it takes energy and money, capital, to get it out of the ground. So they would prefer to use it. But when they do use it, every dollar that they spend for energy, or for capital to build the structure, that's off of their bottom line on the other end. So it behooves them to be very efficient, and they're trying hard to do that. There's some remote sensing situation or devices out there that they use to measure soil moisture and so on. But because they are such a big portion of what's out there, we have to maybe ask, maybe there's room for them to look at, do they grow the proper crop in the proper area at the right time? Because some of the crops that we grow that take 5, 6, 7 acre feet of water a year, that's a lot of water.
So I know where you're going with this. Let's just say it, alfalfa.
Yeah,
because that's the one crop that seems to take up the most amount of water.
Yes,
if I remember from being taught by you before,
it does take quite a bit. But what happened more recently, that growing of alfalfa and shipping it to another part of the world with using Arizona water has become some of the buzz topic.
It has.
Going away, yes, going away from the water level in Lake Mead.
Okay. So are they doing anything to suggest to the farmers to maybe not do that anymore?
Well,
I mean, I don't know that there's the right.
That is a legal issue with ownership of land, and once they own it, how do you take it back? Can you buy it?
Who got there first?
Buy it back. And that certainly isn't my specialty. I mean, that is one of the big pictures of what I call the supply and demand aspect of groundwater, and I'm kind of working more down on the end of the private water well and.
And now, you know what, Gary? We need to take a quick commercial break because I'm looking at the time, but we're going to come back and I want to talk about in the valley, just the one individual person, if they want to get a well, what does that mean?
Okay.
We'll be right back.
If you're looking for a mortgage, you need a personalized plan, not a click button get mortgage option. My team and I have saved families thousands by proactively planning their home purchase or a refinance. Buying a home is a huge decision, and it deserves a strategic approach. My team and I provide a comprehensive mortgage plan, including a complete credit analysis outlining the steps needed to improve your credit score and help you qualify for the best rates and terms in the market. Visit us at tkteam.us today. We'll ensure you get the best guidance so you can make the best decisions. The TK Team, moving you forward.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Hidalgo-Rains with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services, and I've been selling homes here in the Valley for over a quarter of a century. I want to say that experience truly matters, so when you're looking for a realtor to help you either buy or sell your biggest purchase of your life, I hope you'll consider using me. My experience doesn't matter near as much as my clients, so I do dare you to Google me, and I promise you'll see nothing but fantastic reviews because I really do truly care to help navigate you and your family to the very best experience you'll ever have with buying a home.
Have you been thinking about buying a new house or refinancing your existing mortgage? Sure, the rates may be a little higher right now, but the good news is you can actually find the house of your dreams and not settle for your third choice. Call Joe Smith at Epic Mortgage LLC 602-741-4121 for a free mortgage quote or pre-qualification. Epic Mortgage LLC is an AZ locally owned independent mortgage brokerage that provides low-cost options for its customers. Independently owned means low overhead, so you get the best rate, fees, and service. Keep more of your money. Brokers are better. Realtor recommended for over 20 years. Contact Joe Smith at Epic Mortgage today, 602-741-4121.
Whether purchasing a home or refinancing, we know you have choices when it comes to choosing a title company. Navi Title Agency is the leading source for all title, escrow, and marketing needs. With access to the largest title insurance underwriter, Navi Title facilitates successful closings and protects clients from fraud. Creating solutions that save time and money for everyone, ask your realtor or loan officer today about using Navi Title on your next real estate transaction. Navi Title Agency is locally owned and operated in the state of Arizona.
Hey guys, back from commercial break. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And really pressing issue, I think, more than anything, and I was sharing this with Gary on break, is me being in real estate, people call me all the time for advice, and I don't want to give them the wrong advice when it comes to water, right? So a client of mine called recently, and she said, oh my gosh, my mom is super excited. She wants to get out here to Arizona, and she wants to buy some land in Rio Verde. Look at your face. I know. And I did the same thing. I'm like, Rio Verde? Why Rio Verde? Find out why Rio Verde and let me know, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with your mom. Never heard from her again. And you and I both know the reason why I probably never heard from her again. But for those that are watching, I think it really segues well into why Groundwater Awareness Week, people might, real estate's important to everybody who owns a house or wants to own a house, right? And so they want to make sure they're making a good investment where, like if somebody wanted in the Valley's a really big place. I mean, we could span 65 miles from here to Surprise, right? If somebody buys an acre of land and they want to just drill, can they? What does that mean? What does that look like? And what am I talking about?
Okay, yes.
And especially if it's in Rio Verde.
Well, okay, let me answer the questions this way. Well, first of all, you should be asking, if you're going to drill a well, if the property is going to be, out in the country a little bit and going to serve by a private water well, you want to know if the water's there before you buy it. So that's what Groundwater Awareness Week is about for me anyway, is getting the information out there as a hydrogeologist. And there's public data available that tells you where good water is available and places where it isn't. And you can look at on maps on our Arizona Department of Water Resources website. And if there's a lot of wells there, chances are you could get another good one. But there are places where there aren't many wells, and that's because groundwater really doesn't exist there. But you have the right, as long as your property line is not too close to a serving water main by a public entity, then you have the right to drill a private water well.
So that was a big mouthful. Let me just sum up real quick, because being in real estate, I know there's county islands all over the valley.
Yes.
And that's usually where it comes up, is in a county island, somebody has the option to either go with the city water or get a well. And so a lot of times I get asked that question. I'm like, oh, I'd probably go for city water if I were you. That's just because I know all the concerns and issues that come up, and maybe it's good today, but it might not be good tomorrow. And I would love for you to at least warn, or what would be the concerns? I want to say warn, because if somebody really wants, if they have acreage and there's plenty of water underneath them and they want to grow some crops on their land, why not?
Well, there's a lot here that needs to be addressed. For one thing, that if we're talking about private water wells, we don't usually use the word irrigation, because you can't do more than 2 acres with the water that you get from a domestic private water well.
Oh, lesson number 1.
But see, this effort during Groundwater Awareness Week, or outreach and education, is to reach both the private well owners, or would-be private well owners. We do a lot of that. And then there's the realtors. They need to be informed of what's going on. And then there's the mortgage lenders and the people that put constraints or difficult issues on the property. So that was the reason for the first ebook that I wrote, that was an attempt to make realtors aware and mortgage lenders aware of the issues regarding water wells. I said that if you buy, sell, or finance real estate in Arizona, you need to be well-informed.
I love it. I love that, the well-informed. And hey, Farai, on the domestic water wells in Arizona, this screen right here that talks about the book in red, it's really important. And quite honestly, Gary, I've been doing real estate for 30 years now. You know that. Most of us who've been in for even a few years quickly realize selling a mobile home is not very much fun, because it usually involves a shared well agreement.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Yeah. So as soon as I have a client who's interested in one of those, I'm like, I wonder who else in my office would like to help them. Because, and the lenders are the same way, because of how much, like you just said it, there's almost barriers to
absolutely
to actually getting those loans and getting people closed into those transactions.
Well, thank you for giving the segue into this, and that in those books, the first one, Domestic Water Wells in Arizona, was for the realtors, because even though I was teaching water well classes to realtors and to mortgage lenders, I couldn't reach enough of people fast enough. So I said, let me write a book.
Sure.
I took many of the articles that I'd written and published and put it into that book. And chapter 5 in that book talks about shared water wells. There was a touch of it in there. Then the next thing I realized is that I needed a book for the managers of shared water wells, because they have a problem with that by default. You know, the newest person or the lowest person on the totem pole has to be the well manager. And so there were things about that. And I saw how bad that was. Then finally, I took all of that and put it into this latest one. We could talk about that in a little bit.
I definitely want to talk about contracts with respect, because I used to teach contract law. I'm in real estate. But when we're talking about the well managers, now that is unless you're somebody like me or you, we don't usually even... What's a well manager? I know what it is because of somebody who asks me to buy a piece of land or a property with a shared well on it. We quickly have to figure out, we have to go through the county records, see if there was actually an agreement that was recorded, if it was good enough to even ascertain which of the 5 people or more or less are sharing that well, and then whether or not it's been updated so we know who to even talk to, because you can't even test the water unless you get permission from the well manager.
Amen. You have summarized and those, because I have discovered those issues, because I did the inspections for the sales and transfers of real estate for just, I don't know, hundreds if not 1,000 different people, and mostly in the Tucson area, but I also worked all over the state. But the thing is about on a shared well, let's say we're just talking about 5 lots. There's one person that has the well on their lot.
Yes.
They own the well because it's in their land. As a contractor, I've built them and I've cemented them in, and you can't move them. They're there. They're part of the real property. But on the other hand, the groundwater, well, I'm going to jump to the end, is that it's really held as personal property. So if the contract is to share the well and it doesn't name the legal source, that is the registration number of the well that it comes from, how can this person who's maybe a quarter mile away make a claim on that person's personal property, the groundwater in the storage tank? Now that's
theirs.
And this is contract law.
It is.
And what I'm doing in this book is introducing 2 things. One is the concept that we should call these things forever groundwater sharing contracts. We're not sharing the well. That's personal, real property.
But we're sharing the commodity of water.
Which we have, the one person, the owner of the land, has the right to intercept it, to collect it, to store it, and then to share it under contract. So if that's what it is, if it walks like a duck, sounds like a duck, let's
call it a duck.
A duck. They are groundwater sharing contracts, and I'm introducing that, and a few contracts that I'm dealing with now that need modification to meet the new FHA and VA loan standards. We're bringing that mortgage thing back into again. They have written standards that they want to see in the groundwater sharing contract that weren't there in the initial.
What do they want to change?
They have words that need to be in the contract, wording that needs to assure them of this and that and everything.
So we're back to the assurance issue.
The assurance issue, that they get, and their underwriting laws. So the underwriters are the people, and that's what is all in my latest ebook. The other part of it is just another half of it, small, very quick.
So time out. Where can people get your ebooks? I know the answer, but I want you to say it.
At Amazon, under real estate and under groundwater, or on my website, intowells.com.
IN2wells.com. I love the play on words, and we will definitely have it posted with our show notes and everything for you as well.
Thank you very much. You'll see all 3 of these books offered there, and some other reading for free, that I've been involved in. The other thing that I stress heavily in here, and you brought it up, is that if you have a water well inspector come look at the shared well for this person who's buying an interest in it over here, who's going to explain the validity of that sharing agreement to the prospective buyer.
Oh, it's painful, Gary, because there's never anybody who will do that.
I
have to as the realtor.
I would caution you on that.
Of course.
For some reason we could talk about later. But the other thing is, I'm advocating strongly in this book for professional water well inspectors. Now, you have to realize that the assessor is a professional, the home inspector is a professional. They're all vetted, trained, certified,
I'm licensed.
The realtor is
Yeah.
one, the mortgage lender is one. Everyone except the well inspector, and that person is a contractor.
Oh, wow, Gary, what a mistake that is. It's a huge conflict of interest because it's like what happened with the home inspectors 25, 30 years ago.
I remember in, was it Browns versus Jones?
Yeah.
Right. I know that very well.
It was a huge conflict of interest.
Well, I think that this issue that I'm bringing up is as big as that one, because if you recommended a water well contractor who's not licensed, it could be a negligent referral.
It absolutely could
to somebody.
And it's exactly what we dealt with home inspectors. So the until they had to be licensed.
Until they had to be licensed. So I'm advocating very strongly.
1,000%.
For professional, and it's a trade. And the other issue that comes in there is and I've written about the ethics of that. If that well inspector is inspecting his pappies or his grandpappies or a well that he just worked on last week,
that's a conflict.
That's a conflict of interest.
So to finish the show, I want to share with you the end of the story. Yes. We met because of the land in Pine. And you educated my husband and I. You gave us the geological outlines and everything. Like, you taught us about quartz, and you basically needed a straw to get down to find the water in the right spot. Well, you remember I showed you one of the landowners next to us with a bunch of money barreled out a huge lake.
How'd that come out?
Without any water. That's why I want to tell you the rest of the story. So it was like an acre-sized lake he drilled out or barreled out, and he had all this equipment out there, and apparently they hit nothing. And now he's reached out to my husband, James, who you know, because he wanted to get access to some of our land for a road, because he found water on one of the neighboring land, and he bought that land. And what he shared with James, and this is where the ethics comes in, is that company told him they first drilled, didn't hit anything, told him if he drilled further down, he would hit something. It was $150,000 later. Sorry, man, we didn't hit nothing. And he went and bought some apparatus. I guess it was like a $5,000 piece of equipment. And then he started walking the land, and he found where he could source water because of this equipment. And he shared with my husband, he's like, oh, I'm going after those guys. He's like, how could they push me to spend $150,000 more, and they didn't even have this piece of equipment that cost $5,000 to prove whether or not that was a smart venture. It was like they just wanted my money, is what he said to my husband.
Yes.
And but now he's going to go drill where he's found water with a different company, and we'll see if he gets to fill up his lake one of these days that he built.
Well, as I've said a time or two, water is where you find it, and sometimes finding it is difficult and challenging. I've been there, and I've run some of those geophysical methods to locate the potential for having more water there. But the real proof is in drilling the borehole and finding the water.
Enough said, right?
Enough said.
Well, I just got a mouthful, an earful, an eyeful of water today. And then right here with my friend Gary wearing his blue jacket and his blue shirt with all these wonderful ebooks. I want to encourage you guys, anybody, anywhere. We're not talking just Arizona. We're talking groundwater across the whole country. You guys are bringing awareness to the issue that it's important. It's an important issue we should all care about, not just us realtors, not just our well guys, but all of us, because we're made up of water. We can't eat and drink. We can't do nothing without it.
We can't go for long without it.
We can't go for long without it. Enough said. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and check out groundwater sharing contracts on the Into Wells website. I'm sure you'll love it. And I thank you, Gary, for your time.
Well, you're most welcome. Thank you for allowing me to share this week with you.
It was wonderful. What a great show, and thank you for joining us on our mutual journey to becoming unharmable and successful in all of our experiences while we're here in this school of life. We hope you enjoyed it. If you watched us on YouTube, please like and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Likewise, if you're catching us on one of our podcast platforms, be sure to follow us so you never miss out on another one of our shows again. Remember that if you ever have a question about real estate or any of the other topics we cover, check us out on the web, www.gratefulheart.tv, for all of our links to connect with us.
I'm on vacation every single day, 'cause I love my occupation. I'm on vacation every single day, every single day.